Hello, and welcome to the Elevate Entrepreneur, where we decode the success of some of the greatest entrepreneurs that I've met, that I know, that I trust. These individuals have not only built their business up, but they've also impacted lives for the better. Here you will learn not only how to grow your business, but also inspire you to want to be just a little bit better. I'm your host, Raylan Davis. My entire intention is to remove obstacles and excuses as to why people can't realize they deserve more. With that being said, let's jump into this week's episode. Stay motivated, stay elevated. But okay, so what we were just kind of going over was I say the same thing every day, which is I'm living the dream. People ask me what I'm doing, and I said, look, I mean, we get paid to inspire people every single day. That's literally our job. And you were referring obviously back to that. Maybe that's not necessarily the dream. And so go ahead and explain kind of what you were just saying. We'll get into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a privilege. I think it's a privilege of what we get to do, and hopefully to inspire people to see the greatness that's already in them. I think the dream would be, when you think, well, what would be the ideal, would be that we wouldn't be needed, that people would already know that they are enough, that they're valuable, that they're significant. You know, there's this new phrase going around, and I kind of have a little soapbox about it. Have you heard this? Is the imposter syndrome. Have you heard this? Yeah. There's like a whole thing now that you have a syndrome. There's something wrong with you because you don't think that you're good enough. And I'm like, when did that become a syndrome? I just think that's a human experience. Everybody has that. This idea that you're special because you don't think you're good enough. Everybody struggles with that at some point. And I don't think you ever get to a level where that doesn't happen. So the dream would be that nobody struggled with that we would be the way we were when we're little children. You know, I was in an airport just a couple of weeks ago, and there was this little girl. And the airport is crowded and it's late and people are waiting for delayed flights because the airport and Raylan, this little girl is literally spinning and dancing right in the middle where everybody's walking, and she's going, Daddy, watch me. And he's looking at it, he's like, I see you. And it was just with this free abandonment of, I do not care who is looking at me. I want people to look at me. She was so filled with joy. And I looked at her and I said, I just wish everybody was like you. You know, it was just this present in the moment. She wasn't worried, and she was living the dream. Let me tell you, she was living the dream. And I don't know where that's changed. Like, it's interesting. Like, where does that shift? That then we think, oh my gosh, I don't want anybody to see me. I don't want to stand out. I don't want to look different, you know? So that would be my dream. My dream would be a world where nobody would need us to be inspired. Nobody would need us to inspire them because they would know they were good enough on their own.
Yeah, first of all, I love that story because it reminds me too of I used to be a caregiver for a kid with Char syndrome. He's not a kid; he's actually a year older than me, but their pituitary gland doesn't work, so he looks smaller than me. So I called him like my big little brother. But anyway, my little big brother, I should say. But I was at a conference, and at one point, I'll rewind a little bit. I took him to Walmart because our job was to try to get him normalcy. Like, let's get him to the point where like he could live on his own. His parents were the head of the psychology department where the school I went to, and their whole thing was they wanted him to be independent because it's kind of morbid, but it's the truth. They're like, we're not gonna be around forever, and so if we can get him to a point, whatever. Anyway, so fast forward, I'm at Walmart with him. People were looking at him the wrong way, and I was a college kid. I was stupid, and I like kind of got in somebody's face because I was like, stop staring at my brother that way. Like, what is wrong with you, right? Okay, fast forward, I'm giving a speech at this conference for Char syndrome on behalf of him. And there's kids dropping on the ground, rolling around in circles. Like, they don't care at all. Like, there's no judgment because everyone gets it, right? Like, they all have their parents and caregivers. Anyway, so it reminded me of that. But here's what I would say to, again, the whole living the dream thing is that I'm living my dream. Like, it's not based on external circumstances. So the fact that I get to inspire others has no bearing on whether or not you take the information and use it or not. I detach from the outcome. My job is to show you the door. It's your job to walk through it. But here's the thing. If you don't, again, I still live my dream. Yeah. I'm still crushing it. In my head, I'm like, yo, I get to just talk to people for a living. This is what I do. So I think going back to the imposter syndrome thing is that's part of the problem is people base living the dream on external. Right? Whether it's materialistically or also other people, right? Imposter syndrome, like that's a very internal thing. But the truth is because we're comparing.
It's like it's totally taken off too. And I guess it goes back to like we just so like to label ourselves. And I'm like, there's just nothing wrong with you. You don't have a syndrome. This is normal. You are normal.
Yeah. Because
You
people
know,
like people start with that they're broken in their premise.
yes.
That's part of the problem.
Yes, I think that's total. You know what? You was saying that. I'm like, yes. I'm like, why does this bother me so much when they hear people use this term? Um, because you're right. I think it validates the idea that you're broken and that you need to be
Mm.
fixed. And I don't believe that. I believe that you are whole. You were created in the image of God, and there's nothing that needs to be fixed about you. And that this stuff that you don't like about yourself is uniquely there for you to show up in a way that is your gift to the world. You
Yeah.
know, I truly believe that. So that's good. Now I'm gonna remember that. But that's why that bothers me so much. It's because it's focusing on the brokenness.
Yeah, and that's also why, like, I was excited to have you on the podcast. So obviously, I took a look, and we're going to talk about, the "Hey Girl, Yes You Can." Am I saying that right? "Hey Girl,
Hey,
Yes
girl,
You
you
Can."
can. Yeah. Although
Hey,
I'll say
you.
yes,
I'm
you
added.
can.
I added something in there. But what I liked about it was, again, my whole purpose is to remove the victim mentality that people have.
Yeah.
And I love that, like, literally your domain, "Hey Girl, You Can." It starts with that premise that you're whole. You can do it. Like, whatever the thing is, we can figure that out, right? But so maybe talk to me a little bit about how you got to creating this massively huge and successful community from, the 20 some odd years of leadership and community building to now you have your own community. What was that journey like?
Yeah. Well, and I didn't realize it was really somebody recently pointed out to me. I've actually been building communities my whole life. I started my first community. I got into, I came from a community background. I'm a theater background. And so that's all about community. Live theater I loved that. I love the community. It's why I never went into film and television because it was a different community. I love the cast that you have with live theater. And so I got into direct sales when I was 20 years old, kind of fell into it. And really in that industry, you are building a community. You're building a client community, you're building a team. They don't work for you. So it's a leadership role. You have to figure out how to engage people, how to, then I was living in Colorado and I had some friends who asked me they wanted to build networking communities, like in-person networking. And so I was hosting their communities and kind of helping them build that. And that's when people show up and how do you get them to keep coming back and kind of honing those skills. And then Facebook hit and I was in a crazy, this was back old days, old school Facebook when there were no pictures, no videos. And it literally everything started with I am, and you had to fill it in. I am eating an apple, and
I remember statuses.
Yeah, it was like this beginning stages of Facebook. And I was going through this crazy domestic violence divorce, and my 3.5-year-old had cancer at the same time. And so a friend of mine created a Facebook group, which nobody was even on Facebook, much less knew what a group was. I didn't know what it was. And she said, well, because you kind of, I was going through this crazy divorce, that I had to be really careful on who was seeing my stuff and who was, and so it was in this little community group. And that built to like 1,000, this little shut down lock group built to 1,000 people, which in today's world means nothing. But back then that was like an enormous Facebook group.
Yeah.
And these people were so engaged. It was crazy to me. And they kept like saying, oh, you got to read this girl's stuff. And so I realized that was real. These things, all that were leading up, were all pieces of learning how to build a community, whether it was in person, online, whatnot. So when Clubhouse hit, I actually didn't really even want to get on the app. That's how Hey Girl You Can started. Somebody invited me. It was back before, it was invite only. People were like selling their invites.
You started on Clubhouse.
Yes. Totally randomly. And what's really funny about it is this was when people were selling their Clubhouse invitations like on eBay and auctioning off, because it was only iPhone. You had to get in.
I remember because I was a part of the, like, I started basically the 6 months in is when I joined.
So you actually probably came in even earlier than I did.
Yeah.
And
it was early Clubhouse days. People don't know. Like I remember, like, it was like I went from like, Instagram posts and stuff or whatever to like literally I'd talk on a stage and I would get like 50 leads a night. Yeah. And by the way, we were on there for like 8 hours a day. Like it was crazy back in the day.
It was. And it was a whole different animal. I mean, it's gone in a different direction, but it was really cool. And my sister-in-law is this micro influencer, and she saw that I was on Clubhouse, and she's younger than me and cooler than me. And so she's like, you're on Clubhouse? And it was the coolest moment of my life. I was like, I am. I don't know what I'm doing on it, but I have the app.
Little hair flip too.
Yeah.
I see you.
That's right. I am on Clubhouse. And so we took our kids for New Year's. It was during COVID. Everything was shut down. So we were like, okay, we can't do New Year's. We rented this little house. It was a beach house. I lived at the beach, but this wasn't my house, so it felt cooler. So we went for New Year's and we rented, and we're literally in this room, two twin beds. And she's like, we're gonna figure out how to do this app. The kids are all downstairs. My brother's downstairs. I'm like, I don't know. We get in, we open a room, and it's just the two of us. We're the only two in the room, and we're in the room together, right? And we're sitting there figuring out all the buttons and everything. And so she really was like, you need to take advantage of this. And I will tell you, Instagram is a challenge for me because everybody looks perfect, and I don't look perfect, and my room doesn't look perfect, and my clothes don't look perfect, and so Instagram is really difficult for me. I feel like it's I struggle with it. And Facebook is great, but Facebook to me is very personal. I only add people that I really know. So Clubhouse was like, oh my gosh, all I have to do is talk. And somebody said it was very interesting early on, and this is what really I gravitated to Clubhouse for this, that Instagram is what you look like. And that could be you took 100 photos and you posted the one that you like best and you edited it and you got somebody else, all that stuff. Clubhouse is all that matters is what's in between your two ears. It's what's in your head. That's all that matters. And you can tell right away somebody's sincerity when they're talking. I mean, you really can figure that out.
And the consistency, like the reason why I think it works so well, and granted, Twitter Spaces is kind of emulating that a little bit. I mean, it does okay, but what I love most, and the reason why I think I did so well as a coach on the platform, was because you heard me talk every single day, and my message never changed. Yeah. Like, it was always the same, right? And that's where like the authenticity part comes in. Is like, I'm sure for your community and the rooms you're running, it's you, and you're being authentically you. So people were like starting to. It's again similar to podcasting, right? Like, they hear you every day, they're excited for the conversation, and look, there's so many probably stories where they were in the audience and you brought them up and made them talk, and they're like, oh my god, I can do this, right?
Yes. And people hear your heart. Your voice is your heart. It's why texting is such a terrible means of communication, and so misunderstanding can happen. And you probably hear my dog barking in the background. I mean, this and that's part of what this is my deal. I'm like, oh, this is just real life. My mom just came in right before we started recording. The dog's barking in the background, and that's why Instagram stresses me out, because it's so perfect. And I grew up early in my business in my 20s with a lot of pressure to be perceived perfect. I was very young in my industry. I was training women older than me. I literally wore a suit every day. My makeup was always done. I never went to the grocery store if I didn't look like $1 million. And when my daughter got cancer, the most freeing thing that happened was that my entire life fell apart. The rug was ripped out from underneath me, and everybody knew. And I no longer had to be perfect. And it was like, oh, like my life stinks right now. Like, it really does. My life just stinks. There's no way else around it. And it was fabulously freeing. Yeah. And, my life doesn't stink anymore, but I've really embraced that and actually it's interesting. I feel like I have attracted more people to me. And I've been given a better position of leadership because I'm very transparent, and I no longer feel the pressure. I mean, most people can tell that even from the fact that I stopped dyeing my hair, right? I was like, forget it, I'm going to go gray, and that's where I think we need more people who are willing to be vulnerable, transparent, be like, I don't have it all together. I mess up a lot. I say the wrong thing. I stay up too late, and I don't have a great morning routine, and all of those things, and yet I still have something valuable to bring to the table. You don't have to wait until you have all that together before what you have to say is important, before you have something of significant to contribute. And I think a lot of people don't show up to give their gifts, to utilize their gifts, because they're thinking, I don't have all that other stuff. My kids screaming at me, my husband and I just had a fight, the dog just barked. How can I show up and be somebody who's a leader? Well, why not? Because everybody else just had that at home too. Why not? Why not you? We're all the same. We're all just a bunch of humans trying to do our best. We're trying to show up. We get aggravated. We get tired. We're just showing up and do our best. But when we fall into the belief that you need to be perfect before you can show up, we deny all of the people who are meant to be gifted by what you have to say, by what you have to contribute, and I think Clubhouse allowed me to connect with people in a very authentic, genuine way. And it was in a season when Clubhouse was growing so rapidly, and it was back then, you had to apply to have a club and fill out all the paperwork and everything. So there was some luck in that the timing was perfect. I was one of the last clubs approved. And so we just kind of catapulted. Uh, and it's interesting because often I think you may not realize the stuff that you're doing that's grooming you for your next step. I never realized all those years of building communities and learning what worked and learning how to engage people and learning how to build a culture really enabled me to build a community through Clubhouse that grew so quickly and had people so connected and so engaged. Um, I was never planning on doing that. It literally fell into my lap, and then I went, "What do I do with this community?"
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm still figuring that out. We just celebrated our 2 year anniversary, and we have a summit coming up in April.
That's
We've
awesome.
done some live meetups. We were doing some Zoom networking, but the women are amazing. And what I every time I think like, why am I doing this? I think to myself, people need a platform to have their voice heard. They need a community where they're supported, where they're reminded that they're significant. And so that's our whole idea of like, yes, you can. It is my deep desire that every time somebody has a connection with our community, or at least personally a connection with me, that they leave that connection feeling a little bit more like, yes, I can do this, whether it's personal, professional, whatever it is, that they have just a little more belief than they did before they connected. Um, and that, so go back to the dream. That's my dream. That's what
Hmm.
I can contribute to the world.
So then, are you still doing it? Is the community still on Clubhouse, or did you
So
transfer
yeah,
it and
so
move it?
it's actually both. So I still show up Mondays and Fridays and do rooms twice a week. I've kind of stepped back from doing them all the time, just
Yeah.
scheduling wise. I have a lot of very active people that still really utilize our community as their way that they connect. Um, we did start doing some live meetups. That was kind of part of what we looked, and we've tried different things. Now the summit is really the next big thing that we're doing. But it was crazy. Last year we had our 1 year anniversary, and I just thought, oh, we'll do one long room all day, and we'll have some moderators. And I literally almost died. I almost killed myself. I pulled an all nighter because we had over 100 moderators participate and like thousands and thousands of dollars donated in prizes. And I thought, wow, I really underestimated the power of this
Yeah.
community. So this year we planned in advance. We gave out probably $10,000-$15,000 worth of classes and master classes and gifts and prizes. It's crazy what people were showing up with. We still have on our website a whole list of gifts that people donated, workbooks and everything, anything from like you want to create content, to create a course, to personal growth. Um, and we just did kind of a wrap up Zoom meeting last weekend, and we said, all right, we need to really start planning in August for next January's celebration because so many people want to be connected. Um, and we've talked about like where we want that to grow, and maybe down the road do a live in person retreat and stuff. It's
Yeah.
just that I have 3 businesses, and so this is probably my Hey Girl You Can is actually my smallest one.
Yeah.
So it's always trying to juggle how many plates do you want to have in the air, and you probably do this. I mean, as somebody who's great at communicating, there's so many ways you could utilize that,
Hmm.
and it's really difficult sometimes to narrow it down to say what is going to serve both my purpose and honor my purpose and why I'm here, and serve other people, and not go down 10 million different roads. So
Is your other two businesses? I'm assuming it's around the coaching.
So no, I still have my direct sales business. That is my number one business. I have a huge organization and women around the country, and so that is primarily what I do. And I love that. It's a company that's all women based. I teach women how to build a business basically, and do what I did. How did I get started? And I love the industry because there's a lot of personal development in that industry. It's
Hmm.
teaching people how to move from being an employee to an entrepreneur and to think differently, and a lot of personal development. And then I wrote a book, and before COVID, I was very invested in building my other business, which is called Making Cancer Fun, and working with
Hmm.
families who have children who have gone through a life changing diagnosis. Even if it's not cancer, it's some kind of like really devastating, life changing uh, medical diagnosis. And then when COVID, and that was actually why I got onto Clubhouse. It was initially to meet those families, to be
Hmm.
able to teach them tools and resources, and to give families hope. I had just done a TEDx talk and was starting to speak at conferences. And then around COVID hit, and that the whole medical industry, I just kind of needed to step away from that during that season.
Yeah.
So I'm just starting to inch back into that. I just was invited. I spoke on a panel for a conference, and I'm just starting. It's interesting how God works. I've had some people recently start to message me, say, "Hey, can I get your book? I saw you talk here. I do that," because I've really been out of that since the pandemic hit. So I'm
Yeah.
starting to tiptoe back into that now.
Well, I think the reason why I like community, like for us, for example, so we have like you, like I'm balancing a whole bunch of different things, and so we have the Elevated Coach Academy. It's for newer coaches or even seasoned that just want to have like kind of the way I looked at it was like it's like creating a gym. I was a jiu-jitsu practitioner, I am, and I used to be a fighter, but I like the idea of like you have a gym where everyone kind of helps each other grow.
Yeah.
That's what the academy was, and then there's the podcast agency. We help people like create their own podcasts like this, and it creates opportunities for them. But I make way more money, obviously, on the podcasting side, and I make way more money on my sales consulting that I do in corporate. But I still invest a whole bunch of time in the academy because one, it's what I love. I can do that in my sleep. Like there's nothing better than we have everything in Slack. That's what I was going to ask you next, right? Which is like, how are you going to house it? Let's say if Clubhouse goes down, whatever. But like, because I use Slack for our community, and every week we do intentions on Mondays, and it's just like, what's your intention this week? Like, all right, what do you got to get through? Like, I will do that until I'm dead, and
So
I make
you,
no money.
you don't know this. That's the room that I do on Mondays.
Oh, really?
We do an 8 a.m. goal setting room, but it's goal setting for confidence, not just productivity.
Yeah.
And so it's how do you use your goals to build confidence? That's so crazy. That's exactly. And don't you love it? It's like so exciting.
Because I give a little talk in the beginning, which I'm supposed to. My team makes me try to stick to 15 minutes, which I never do. And then we go through everyone's intentions for the week. Yeah, that's why I have a podcast. But I love it. But here's what I figured out though was that everything grows if your community grows. So as long as there's a through line to everything, the bigger the community gets, the more opportunities you're going to have to, again, I saw obviously you have courses, like you have the, was it the Wealth Builder program that you do?
So that's actually an affiliate. Yeah. So that's one of our affiliates. Tanya Hood.
But like all of your things grow when that community gets bigger. So for me, it's like, I don't make, again, it's $97 a month. I don't make any money on that. But those people eventually progress who they can do the podcast agency and you know what I mean? So I think I love the idea of everyone having a community. You just got to figure out what the through line is and also because as you can speak to even better than me is I don't think people realize how much work it is. Like I had to hire a full-time community manager and we only have 20 to 30 members. And to run the meetings, to put it in the calendar, to check in with everybody, like I had to hire somebody for that. It's a lot of work, and I don't think people they go, "Oh, I'm just going to build a community on Facebook groups." Well, if you want to engage following, if you want to engage community of people actually like paying attention, that's a full-time job.
Yeah. For my direct sales business, I run a couple of different Facebook groups, and it really is. And you have to be even when you hire somebody, you need to make sure that they understand your voice and your purpose, and particularly because even just commenting. I mean, if you want to have a Facebook group, you need to monitor those comments. That can go down quick. You need to know what's going on in there. You need to know who's there. And it's not just, this is what people don't understand with community. Well, I think there's two things people don't understand when building community. One is that it's not just getting people into the community. Anybody will come in and check out what you're doing. But how do you get somebody to stay? How do you get somebody to say that out of all the places, out of all the coaches groups, I want to be here and work with you. This is where I feel valued. This is where I feel significant. This is where I feel like I get value. I'm learning. This is worth it to me to show up and to invest my time, right? So how do you keep people engaged? I truly believe the secret is making people feel valued, that people will stay where they feel valued. And if we can, and everybody feels valued for different reasons, but we have to invest a lot of time in making sure that people feel important, feel significant.
The same token on that, not to cut you off, but was attendance. So what we learned early on is you sign up, because again, we're a paid community. It's $97 a month, but still people don't show up to things. And so what we started doing was within the first 5 days of you there, we blow you up. Come to the meeting. The meeting is now, like it's this time. You got to be there. And if you don't go there, my team pings me and go, "Hey, just Tara didn't show up for intentions today." Like you're a red alert in the first 5 days because we know once you come to a meeting and you meet everybody and you get the feeling that you're part of the community, I know you'll stay. But we just got to get you there first, like that, because I've had people in the past, and this is why we started being a little bit more. I don't want to say like picky, but like I don't know any other way to word it. We're a little bit more picky now because I had some people join the community that didn't show up to anything. And they're like, "Yeah, I just didn't see the value in it." Yeah, because you didn't go to nothing.
Well, it's like a gym, right? It's like
Yeah,
you can join
exactly.
a gym. Anybody can be part of a gym, but if you don't show up and use the equipment, I'm sorry, you're not going to lose weight or be healthy. Do you know how many
Exactly.
gym memberships I've had that I've never used, and then I don't cancel it because I'm like, well, maybe next week.
Maybe one day. Yeah.
Maybe one day. Well, right. This is how gyms stay in business. Think about it. If all of their
Yeah.
members went, there's not enough treadmills, and no gym ever shuts down their sales department. Like they're smart.
No.
They know we have to keep signing up members.
Think about
people
Planet
sign
Fitness.
Up and, yes.
It's $10 a month. How do they make money? Oh, it's because of how many people sign up. They don't go.
Yeah. And
so you're talking through the importance of community, though, and I cut you off, but you're talking about retention is
really
number
great
2.
Because in keeping a community, part of this is how do you keep a community? You need to connect with your people, and you need to get them engaged. What you're talking about is actually a conversation that, and I've never done this as far as with church building. I've just been on conversations. This is the one thing that they know with churches. People will come to church and they'll go to church, but if they don't get into a life group, a small group where they're meeting with people on a consistent basis outside of, like, let's say their Sunday sermon, whatever, they really won't stay in the church because they don't feel connected. They don't feel like they're part of something. And so
it's also accountability.
Yes, and
if you don't show up to that group on Sunday, they're going to be like, "Hey, Tara, where were you?
Where were you?"
Listen, I grew up in a Baptist church. If I didn't go
totally get it.
Yeah, if I didn't go to church, I was going to have Grandma Emmons who hits up my grandma and says, "Where the hell was Raylan?"
Yeah. Well, I would say that. Accountability is interesting because we talk about this on our Monday goal setting. And I found this to be fascinating. If you set a goal, so everybody has goals, right? So what do we know? We know that if we set the goal and if we speak the goal out loud, we tell somebody the goal, and then we have that person hold us accountable. Do you know that you have a 95% higher chance of hitting your goal? Mm-hmm. Like, that just is crazy to me that these 2 small hacks, say it out loud and tell somebody that you're going to be accountable to them, is going to give you like a 95% head start above everybody else and their goals. So that having that group, having a coaches academy, your elevated coaches, where people are showing up, they're being told they're significant, they're being reminded they're significant, they're reminded that they can do this, you can coach, you can do this. Like, you're going to have days where you doubt it, but you can. But now you're being accountable to your other members. That is so invaluable, particularly if you're a new coach, because you're going to have those up and downs, and we operate on emotion. And can I do this? And can I do this? And then you have a good session and you question yourself, and you need to be in a community that's going to consistently remind you, you can do this. Somebody else had that same setback. Just hang in there, it being that relatable. I remember when I started, I've never been a coach in that way, but I started and nobody showed up. And, like we tell people when they're trying to build a clubhouse community, I'm like, I sat in a room with my sister-in-law, just the 2 of us. Mm-hmm. That's how it starts. Everybody has to start somewhere. And so I think it's great that you're providing a space where people can grow and thrive, but they have to show up. And I would say you're not being picky, you're being selective.
That's the word.
The right people.
There you go.
Because here's the other thing. The other members, it doesn't benefit the other members if there's people who are not showing up.
Yeah.
So it's also protecting the people who are showing up, to say we value those of you who are showing up, and we want to make sure that people are showing up for you too.
Yeah. Also, I'll push back and say that you are a coach because you're also helping these, other people that join, one, step up and talk more, be more assertive, like, choose a different future. Like, that's coaching. Even when it comes to like helping them build a community, like, you're coaching them.
Yeah.
I
guess when I think coaching, I think like I don't have people who like pay me to sit down with them for an hour and coach in that way. So that's what I think of a coach. But yes, that's what I do, is I definitely from that standpoint. I think the other misconception, I said there were 2 big things people confuse with community, is that a lot of people want an audience. Mm-hmm. And an audience is not a community. Those are very different things. An audience is, I stand on the stage and everybody listens to me. And there is a time and a place for that. I think a lot of people, whether that's I want to be a speaker, or you write a book, or you have a blog where you're putting out your information. And so if you kind of picture that as there's the stage and then there's everybody in the audience. Communities really should look more like spider webs. They should look like, hey, Raylan, let me connect you with this great person. And let me connect you with this great person. And I take the spotlight off of me and I put it onto my members. Yeah. And I think I think a top community builder understands, and I really get this. The more I spot, that was kind of a little compliment to myself. I just said there, a top community member, and I get it. the more you take, just have to trust that this works. The more you take the spotlight off of yourself and you find other places to put the spotlight on your community members and let them shine, the spotlight naturally will shine brighter on you.
Yeah.
It just will. And it goes back to that saying that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. When people feel that your genuineness of I want you to succeed, I want you to win, and you affirm people and you give them the spotlight, you just have to trust you will get all the spotlight you need. And I think people are so desperate that they want the spotlight that they're setting themselves up saying, I want to build a community, but really they just want an audience.
Yeah.
And that's not going to long term. That's that you're looking for something different. And not that one's right or wrong. Just don't say you're trying to build a community when you're trying to build an audience.
Yeah, and that's also why I made the pivot to doing the academy, because we do have like office hours where like our team coaches, because there's some basics to coaching that you need. Like there's some tactical stuff. My favorite part though is when we connect. Like we have 2 members right now that are just starting a new company together. Like that's to me what it's about. And then like we have somebody else that got some help. We have a member that does human design. Well, another member was like, hey, I need help with that. So they connected. Like that was the intention of it. And so now like even with our Facebook or Instagram group or Instagram page we created for the academy, I have very little posts in there. It's all the members. Because for me, I didn't come to this conclusion on my own. I read a book called What's in It for Them by Joe Polish.
Somebody just recommended this to me. Actually, I think it's one of your people. I think the person that I talked to when I set it up.
Yeah, Adrian.
Discussion with you. Yes, I think he recommended that. I wrote it down. It's on my list. Yes.
Yeah. So Joe Polish is like a mentor of mine. Like he's the godfather of masterminds. So he created what's called Genius Network. It's $25,000 to be a part of. Like or $100,000 depending on which group you're in. But he's a master connector. And the whole premise is like, if I can connect 2 people and I'm smart and intelligent about it, like if I just always think about what's in it for them, everyone wins.
Yeah.
And it's also about, you have to be strategic, obviously, and pick the right people. This is where the selectiveness comes into play. But again, I learned that late, because when I first started, I thought I wanted a community, but really I just wanted a stage. But now that I'm a little bit farther ahead in my career, now it's like, no, I actually don't want it to be about me at all. Because the community will grow and it's about each other. Yeah. So I'm with you on that.
I think there's a time and a place for both, right? Like I'm a speaker, so obviously I love the stage. Yeah. I come from a theater background. There's a time for that, and then there's a time for community. So I think it's just being really clear on what you're trying to create. I see these Facebook groups where they're being promoted as join our community, but it's just really the person who's running the Facebook group just wants the stage. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, be part of my page. This is all about me and this is what I can give you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
It's your positioning and what your people are expecting that becomes the problem.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I want to talk to you a little bit about, because I know that you had mentioned something about the idea of mindset and gratitude. For you, where does gratitude play a role? Because again, you came from a world where between your daughter and the life, your marriage before, like it's hard to be grateful when you're going through hell.
Yeah.
And you found a way to kind of take the benefits of being grateful. Because again, for me, I actually grew up in a domestic violent home as well. And so like it took me, so like my father went away when I was 8 or 9, around there, for domestic violence. And so that was my whole positioning for why we do Elevated is to help people stop being a victim in their life. Because from that point forward, I was a victim. And everyone told me I was a victim, and I lived my life like I was a victim. And as a result of that, I got victim results, right? And then I chose not to anymore. But gratitude, which is the one I wanted to talk about, is interesting because it wasn't until, 6 months ago that I started getting into gratitude. Because you remember, I'm also a Neanderthal at heart, right? I wrestled. I was a professional MMA fighter. There was no being grateful for what you've done because what you've done doesn't matter. Like, it's on to the next thing. And so talk to me a little bit about your gratitude practice and kind of what you want to talk about.
Yeah, and I'll share with you how that came from. But I have to tell you, you and I are going to be besties. So we could have a whole other conversation. I realized there is a benefit to being a victim. There was a moment when, because I'm a single mom, I'm a full-time single mom. My daughter had cancer. I'm a domestic violence. I mean, you get a lot of sympathy from people, and it was totally not intentional in any way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
But there was a moment that I realized I could not get to the next level in my business, in my career, in my income, as long as I was continuing to benefit from all that I was getting, from all the sympathy that I was getting because I was a victim. And it was a distinct shift because we have a society where when you're a single mom, everybody already knows what that means. It means you must be poor.
Hmm.
We assume that if you're a single mom, you're poor. And so I had taken that on, and I thought, why? I had more money when I was young. Why is, why can't I just get back? And I realized that that was why, and that I was benefiting from that. And there was a real come to Jesus moment of like, okay, are you willing to let go of all of those benefits and break that you're no longer going to take on that I'm a single mom, and that's why I should not be um, working, elevating, and living up to this level. So that's a whole other conversation. But when you said that, I was like, yes, that's exactly, there is that, and it's not meant in a mean way, right? But it
No,
doesn't
just
benefit
a
anybody
choice.
if you believe you're a victim,
Well,
right?
it's like it's the way that I usually say it's like it serves you to be a victim, but is it serving you the way that you want it to?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I think most of us don't realize it. At least I didn't. I didn't realize it was serving me. I would have said, no, it's not serving me. It's not serving me, but it was, and that was
Hmm.
difficult to face. So I will tell you, when my daughter, I was right in the middle of my divorce. It was horrible. Um, my daughter had was in an emergency room, dying in an emergency room. Her lungs had collapsed. They didn't know why, and basically, had I not brought her to the emergency room, she would have died in her sleep. So they were fairly certain she was a high risk stage 4. I mean, they were pretty much like, we'll try to save her life, but chances are she's not going to live. So we end up. That's the first thing that happens. Um, the next day, I had, because of my divorce, I was left kind of financially in a wreck. And so I had just gone through months of negotiation and signed on to be a spokesperson for this new company. I was very excited. This was going to totally, fix my financial situation. It was a huge opportunity. So it was a really big deal. I'm in the hospital, literally in the hospital, and I get a phone call from the owner's son. The owner just had a massive stroke and had dropped dead, and the project was indefinitely on hold. Yeah, so that was like, I'll have to deal with that later.
Yeah.
And then a couple days later, I get a phone call from the hospital while I'm there, and they're like, your insurance company has dropped you, apparently, because I had to change my insurance during my divorce. And
Yeah.
so now they said, well, she had a pre existing condition. And
Oh,
so they've dropped you and they've dropped her. And how would you like to take care of your bill? And I remember standing there, Rylan, and I was like, well, I don't know, how much is the bill? And she's like, well, right now it's $96,000, and we've been there 4 days.
yeah.
And I was like, I'll have to get back to you on that.
Yeah.
And everything was just falling apart around me. And I felt like, what else is going to go wrong? Right? Like, what other bad news can I get? And I was literally, I mean, during the season, I was literally like in the room with my daughter one minute, like, hey, we're going to get through this. And next minute in the hall with my attorney, dealing with like cops and restraining orders and my attorney. And then, hi, I'm back. I mean, it was really a crazy world. And, um, and I knew from all of my years in personal development the concept that what we focus on gets bigger,
Yeah.
right? And we know that now because of neuroplasticity. It's not just something that sounds good, is that we can rewire our brains. And we know that we have a reticular activator, and once we activate it, it's going to seek out more of what we're looking for. And anybody who says, oh, that's not true, that's woo-woo stuff, I'm like, really? Tell me about the last time you got a new car. Didn't you
Hmm.
start to notice that everybody had the same car as you recently?
Yeah.
It's just crazy how that works. So I knew this. I was like, okay, so what can I practically, like from a practical standpoint, what can I do to focus on something different? And, our bodies vibrate at different energy levels. At the end of it, we're just science, we're just energy. And the highest, of course, is love. And let me tell you, when you're in that circumstance, that is a difficult level to get to. I was not getting to love.
Hmm.
But right under that is gratitude. And
Mm.
I believe that everybody can get to gratitude. And so I literally sat down one night. My daughter, I was
Did you
at
ever
the edge of the
read
hospital bed.
Power versus Force? By the way, because that's what kind of reminded me
No,
of David Hawk.
no.
Power versus
Tell me what it is. I have to
Force.
write it down.
Versus Force. David Hawkins, and so they have a chart in there that reminds me of what you just said. You can imagine it almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but instead
Yeah.
it's like your energy, your vibes. So it's like the lowest level is actually like victimhood or shame, and
Yes.
then the
Shame is the
highest
lowest.
level
Yep.
Yeah, then like one of the highest levels on his chart, for example, was like enlightenment, which is
So it's
being no
interesting.
one,
All right.
nowhere, no time.
I'm
So
saving
anyway,
it to my reading list right now. Now
yeah,
you
he
have
was
two
one of
books
like
on
the
my reading list.
OGs. Yeah, listen, I'm kind of a book slut, so I'll tell you all the
You'll
books.
share all your books with me. Well, now I got another one. Yeah, I love. Well, this kind of stuff fascinates me, right? So
Yeah.
shame is so fascinating, and by reading there, and I literally sat down with I decided again this was old school Facebook. So
Hmm.
I decided Facebook used to have a little they called a little notes section. So on your profile you had a little notes section and you could take notes in there and everybody could see your notes.
Mm.
And so
I didn't know that.
yeah, so my daughter's hooked up to all the machines across from me. I'm sitting at the end of the bed. I had a laptop that I had to borrow from somebody because I did not even have a laptop. My cousin's boyfriend at the time let me borrow his laptop because I didn't have money for a laptop and I didn't have a laptop. And I just said, okay, I'm just going to list what I'm grateful for. I have to do something. I have to change what's happening here. I'm just going to list what I'm grateful for. And the first night, I wrote 19 things. The first one was that I was
That's
grateful.
impressive.
Yeah, my first one was that my mother was at the hospital with me, and the second was that my cousin was there to take care of my mother. Like,
Yeah.
and I listed, and I mean insignificant things, every little thing I could think of. And so I put it on Facebook as kind of an accountability. I was going to do this every night. And the next night I wrote more things. And the next night I wrote more things. And the key was they had to be things that were new. So what happens with most people and where they get gratitude wrong is they
Say
go
the
and
same
list five
thing
things
over
to
and
be
over
grateful
again.
for. I'm grateful for my spouse, my kids, my health, my house, my job. Done. I didn't list any of those things. This was like, I remember one day, a girlfriend of mine, she was like, what do you need at the hospital? And I was like, honestly, I need tweezers for my face and a pair of socks. And if you saw my face, you'd want to give me tweezers too. And she brought me tweezers and socks to the hospital. And I was grateful for that. One day I was grateful that somebody invented coffee. I have no idea who did it, but I was grateful for them.
Mm-hmm.
And some things were big grateful. Like I'm grateful we got a great test back. But I distinctly remember one night writing, I am so grateful that a day is only 24 hours because I just don't think I could get through another hour. And I'm grateful that I only have to get through 24 and tomorrow we can start over. So that's what I mean. Like, what can you find that's so deep and grateful that you would almost miss? It would almost seem insignificant. You know, I'm grateful somebody brought food to the hospital. I'm grateful that we have another day to fight. You know, we have another day to fight because I was watching, my daughter was in the intensive care unit for a big part of her treatment, and we did most all of her treatment inpatient, and I was watching all my friends lose their children. And you have to work hard, deep when you can't list your 5 easy things, you know?
Yeah.
But what's interesting was in 3 months, so I started every night writing. Within 3 months, I actually ended up like writing a blog about how like, and I actually was titled "Life is Good." And here's what's crazy is nothing had changed. My daughter was still absolutely critical. She was still in a stage 4 high risk. They still had very low confidence she was going to live. I was still dealing with my ex-husband. I was still dealing with courts. It was crazy. Nothing about my circumstances had changed. But within 12 weeks, I could literally sit there and be like, my life is really good. And that is the power of being able to rewire your mind. And I never learned this term until years later, but I guess it's really what I've always done is that we have a picture. You have a picture and you cannot change your picture. You know, you're
Thank you for listening to The Elevated Entrepreneur. If you want to check out more about the guest, look at the description below. And as always, if you're a beginner coach or even someone that's seasoned and you're looking to join a community of like-minded individuals, learn about branding, lead generation, sales, you name it, think about applying to the Elevated Coaches Academy. You can learn more about that in the description below. I look forward to having you in the next episode. We'll talk to you soon. Stay motivated, stay elevated.